Issue 150. We start out with Sonic having fun defeating a Shadow Swapbot that was going to attack a chili dog salesman. The natural problem with having Eggman know where Knothole is. And then it gets sent into the water and electrocuted. The chili dog salesman, who's French, for some reason, compliments him with a chili dog. And Ash calls Sonic a show-off for being a hero. So it looks like he's taking over the jealous douchebag role that Jeffrey had. I like that Amy actually points out that he's just jealous. Later on, Sonic says with a smooth smile that he was thinking maybe Mina and him could hang out, down by the creek, and gives her a flower, not caring about what Ash would think. Well, I think I know what's going on here now. After all, Sonic's never even given Mina a chance as a girlfriend, because Sally exists. Meanwhile, a time zone away in a trendy establishment uptown in Station Square, an unlikely customer, Fang, is meeting with an upscale patron, asking if he's finally going to break down and let him have a go at the Angel Island stash. Fang's told that the merchandise he speaks of is still too high profile, and then it's explained that said stash is the largest and only known supply of Chaos Emeralds, and he's confused as to why he doesn't think it's worth going after. It makes sense that these would be on Angel Island, but since when? And if they were on the island, why didn't Eggman find them? Or the Dark Legion use them against Eggman? And why does Fang care about whether someone will let him go for a stash? Why doesn't he just do it? Fang is asked while Rouge is listening in secretly how he could possibly get the gems when they're heavily guarded, especially now that they've been rebuilding the island after Eggman had his fun. Does that mean Eggman was kicked off the island off screen? That was anticlimactic. Fang's told that Locke has backup guarding that stash, and the man talking to him would rather go after a sure thing down in Cat Country than an unknown on a floating island. Rouge thinks to herself selfishly that who's more deserving of Chaos Emeralds than her? Sonic for one, Tails for another. I doubt they'll ever explain why she turned out to be so entitled. She flies to Angel Island thinking that the security guards will be putty once she gets her hands on them, and at first we see Mina appreciating being shown affection by Sonic with him gently touching her chin. Kind of surprising that he would do that and wouldn't just kiss her outright, honestly. I guess he's really got a soft side to him. Unfortunately, Mina quickly decides that she'd rather be with her jealous douchebag boyfriend instead. I almost wrote girlfriend for some reason. Sonic looks confused, asking, "Something wrong, babe?" I'd like to point out that this would hardly be the first time Sonic said babe, so it makes perfect sense for his character. As Mina runs away, saying that this somehow isn't what she wanted, Sonic for some reason says yeah, like he's agreeing with her, for some reason, and thinks a sigh instead of doing it before saying, "So close." Mina runs away with Amy thinking of her as rude for not talking to her, and then he immediately decides to go flirt with Amy instead, calling her babe while thinking of how many hot chicks are in the vicinity. He asks if she's free right now, while he looks goofy because his eye clearly isn't focused at her, so it looks like he went cross-eyed. Several hours later, while the sun is starting to set, we see Tails wondering why Sonic didn't come over like he was supposed to, and then he's completely blown away at seeing Sonic kissing Bunny. Wait, so why did someone supposedly clingy and infatuated with him as Amy not insist on spending time with him up to this point, to the point where down the line he had to settle for Bunny? How did he ever end up in this situation? Either way, Bunny shows that something good did come out of this, since she says that after Antoine and her broke up, she didn't think anyone would be interested in her, causing Sonic to sweetly compliment her, "A babe like you? What's not to like?" He didn't have to say that, that was sweet. Still though, why did he have to settle for her and not stick with Amy or someone else like that? What failure caused him to get to this point instead of spending all day with someone else? Sure, Bunny's the most desperate, with her confidence getting another boyfriend having been shattered. Probably also due to the fact that she's a cyborg and so she thinks no one will ever settle for her. But he didn't know about that. And Amy was pretty desperate to get in too, more than Bunny would ever be. Sonic then gets annoyed at how Tails is acting all betrayed seeing them together, saying, "What are you doing? Say it ain't so." That last line being the exact same thing he said when he thought Sonic killed Sally. Not exactly appropriate to the situation. I mean, you'd think he'd be congratulating him, being happy for their love and thankful Sonic finally moved on and that Bunny did. But no. Instead, he acts like this is the worst thing ever, when he should have no way of knowing there could be anything wrong with the way he's acting. I mean, if it's because Bunny and Antoine used to date, well, He never really insulted Sonic for going after Sally when Antoine used to have a crush on Sally. But with Bunny, it's the worst thing ever? Sonic, since he's naturally pretty irritated at being treated like the bad guy in the situation when all he wanted was to get affection, says, "What's it to you? When I need a kid sidekick, I'll let you know." Tails then storms off, looking miffed from that confusingly harsh statement. Don't worry, I know what's really going on, but even with that in mind, I still find it confusing. It does explain a lot if this is how he'd behave towards his little brother figure when interrupted kissing. After Bunny tries to push him away from another kiss, asking if he's okay, for some reason she's still cuddling with him hours later when I expect her to immediately leave in a huff like Tails did. It's like she's almost as desperate for affection as he is. Instead of getting mad at him that he brushed off Tails, she ended up napping with him for a while before commenting on how weird this has been. Sonic happily says that it's been a great dream, and Bunny leaves looking worried, telling him that he'd better patch things up with Tails and it wouldn't do to be seen out late like this. Sonic says, "Well, don't be a stranger," and Bunny says, "Good luck with your parents." They would lecture him for making them worry after all. He then talks blissfully about how happy his life is, and yep, it's finally revealed why Sonic has been acting like this. This is actually Scourge. Wait a minute, he has green eyes? But Sonic only got green eyes from running around a planet with the Super Emerald. So why the hell does Scourge have green eyes? If he got his hands on a Super Emerald himself, what'd he do with it? Either way, this revelation adds a lot of deep insight to his character. The minute he impersonated Sonic, he proceeded to not ruin his reputation, well, on purpose anyways, but he proceeded to not commit a whole bunch of crimes, not kill anybody, not even write graffiti like in Paulus. Instead, this so-called evil twin lived life almost exactly the same way Sonic did, right down to saving a chili dog salesman from a swap bot. The only difference is he's a Casanova. Now let's think about why Sonic would go out of his way to want affection as much as possible to the point of approaching two different girls. If you didn't know this with Scourge, you could have logically concluded that Sonic couldn't stand not having Sally as a girlfriend anymore and wanted to feel better about it by getting affection from other girls instead, using them for affection to get over Sally. Because being left by Sally left him lonely and desperate. So Scourge must be really lonely and desperate to get a girlfriend as soon as possible if he's acting like this. Now that's not an insult by any means. I love the fact that he has this quality to him, because think about what that means. Sonic would be lonely and desperate because he misses affection he isn't getting anymore. Or maybe for Scourge he never got to begin with. Maybe Scourge never got enough affection from his family, if at all. And that led to him becoming desperate to get as much of it as he can to overcompensate, which led to him becoming the Casanova he is today. It's certainly more interesting than just being one-dimensional. There's no indication he'd do anything else differently. He might be a hero just like Sonic would, aside from having a rebellious streakdom. And the fact that he's even happily going through with this instead of clinging onto his villain reputation says a lot. But because he's flirting with Amy and then Bunny right afterwards, we have a situation where if he stayed any longer, he'd end up getting in huge trouble, with not only all the girls he flirted with, but also with Sonic's parents. What if he would have gotten kicked out of the Freedom Fighters? And all because of a mistake from someone who didn't know any better. Anyways, this all started when Patch threatened him as he was sitting on a comfy chair against a stone wall, looking totally apathetic at best and mildly annoyed at worst at seeing Patch threatening his life. Patch says that once he pushes a button, he'll eliminate his greatest enemy, who is inexplicably him now, forever. Have we ever gotten any indication that Scourge ever did anything to him to deserve this? No. That's ironic as hell, since he's like an evil twin. If anything, Sonic did more to Antoine to deserve that from all the bullying he put him through. We had no indication that his evil twin bullied Patch at all. Not even a whoopee cushion. Isn't that lopsided? And why isn't Scourge reacting more appropriately to this? Is he so dissatisfied with his pointless life that he just doesn't care about anything anymore? Like he was acting last time we saw him with his friends? Or is it that he just doesn't take Patch seriously as a threat at all? Now I'm guessing Patch's device was meant to make him explode. Well, instead it turns out that Patch, who's actually called Patch now and not earlier, was going to send Scourge to Mobius Prime. And I quote, courtesy of Evil Rotor's latest doodad. I highly doubt his parents actually named him Evil Rotor. He's just calling him that because of his knowledge of other rotors, I guess. Either way, Patch was going to send him to Mobius Prime to get rid of him for no reason. And after he predictably gets knocked out by a Scourge, who, wait, what'd he do to knock him out? It looks like he hit him with a spinning thing, but we see the ends of all of his limbs, and he's not holding anything in his hands. How'd he hurt him? Anyways, he figured Patch would try to fry his tail again. He's phrasing it as if sending him to Mobius Prime would have killed him. Sure, he has tried to kill him, but that has nothing to do with this. Either way, he decided to fight fire with fire by sending Patch to Mobius as a punishment. Why was he surprised that the device actually worked? Conveniently, the minute he discovered it worked, he saw Antoine through the portal and kicked him, considering him a goody two-shoes in the narration and thinking, who would miss this dweeb anyway? If only this had happened to the early Antoine when he was still a condescending, arrogant jerk pining after Sally and calling Sonic a commoner, I would have fully believed he deserved this. But instead, this happens long after he received the character development, making him simply a nervous good guy. When Patch wakes up in Antoine's clothes, he gets all panicked, calling them hideous. And Scourge, still in the process of putting Patch's clothes on the unconscious Antoine, teases Patch, I can't believe you wear this eye patch only to pick up girls. You phony. First off, wouldn't he have known that by now since he'd known him for so long? Did Patch seriously never put the patch over the wrong eye even once? And second, I guess he's so Casanova that he just projects and assumes he's wearing it to pick up girls, because that came out of nowhere. The only girl Patch has flirted with as far as we know is Alicia. Then the narration immediately shows Scourge seeing Patch be knighted by the king, and has him realize that if he couldn't be the top dog at home, the other Mobius would serve just as well, as he watched him scheme and worm his way into the king's confidence. Well, to be fair, maybe it's just that I haven't seen him in that process, but Patch was just acting like a more brave, proactive Antoine. Of course he'd get into the king's confidence, even if he wasn't intentionally trying to doing so for an evil plan. Then we see Antoine in Patch's clothes, holding the eye patch up, asking nervously, but what about me? Why wasn't this panel before the previous one? It wouldn't make any sense otherwise. Patch didn't get into the king's confidence that fast. Scourge then tells him, survival of the fittest, babe. I'd keep wearing the disguise if I were you, especially if you hope to ever see home again. I guess he was calling him babe as a joke, and naturally this threat worked on Antoine, since for all he knew, if the evil twins knew who he really was, they'd imprison and torture him, rather than being smart and just continuing to take advantage of the fact that he could be made to do whatever they wanted. That's what I think would be more likely to happen. Really, Scourge wanted him to keep the disguise on because if the Zone Cops ever figured out what happened, he'd get in trouble. Because Sonic wasn't watching the right screen while this was going on, apparently. What's the point of having camera footage of every zone in front of a Zone Cop if they won't catch stuff like this? Anyways, Scourge decided Patch had a great deal, saying, best of all, no more Sally and all her whining and complaining. If only Sonic had said that, because that would make perfect sense. Although I don't understand what Alicia would have to complain about. She doesn't have to constantly fight against Robotnik. What could she possibly have to stress out and complain about? He sees Sonic running around while Sonic's planning to deactivate all of Eggman's landmines by running along with super speed. Then as Scourge talks about taking an opportunity, he's wearing a metallic glove on one hand that looks like that Giant's glove he got for Robo Robotnik, but that was sought after as this huge alien weapon, so I guess it's just a metallic gauntlet, which he uses to hit Sonic from the other side of a portal in what must be an especially damaging blow that knocks him out. Scourge says that he's not wild about Sonic's shoes for some reason, and then smartly says, but I guess everyone would catch on real quick if I wore black leather. It's so interesting. It's like, you'd think Scourge would be obsessed with keeping his villain reputation because he's always been one, but instead we see a guy who would gladly give up all of that, including his clothes, just out of hedonism. Because when you get right down to it, Scourge doesn't really care about being a villain per se. He'll race Sonic and scuffle with him instead of killing him, and merely do graffiti and leave Tejo Palos, because he doesn't really care about being as evil as he could, which is fascinating. As long as being a hero would net him a happier life than he's ever had before, he's happy. Even if it means giving up his whole identity as an individual. His only crime is being a hedonist, selfish. Granted, maybe he would go on to do really bad things if he stayed in this place for longer. Maybe he gets sick and tired of being ordered around by people like Sally and the King and go back to his old ways. We don't know. Because in a prime example of a wasted opportunity, we'll never get to see anything like that. So I can only work off the data I'm being given. Which is the ironic data that if Sonic was replaced by his evil twin, things might not be so bad. The only person who'd be really hurt by it is his evil twin himself, because he'll get in huge trouble with the girls in the group for wanting affection. Anyways, Scourge calls his gang a bunch of lamos for some reason that he annoyingly never elaborates on because fuck giving depth to any characters. You'd expect him to call the heroes lamos. Meanwhile, Rouge is naturally surprised finding a city on Angel Island much like Station Square, but filled with echidnas instead of overlanders. Has she never even heard of Echidnapolis? Why is it so surprising to her? She rudely responds to some people trying to give her a tour of the city with, "Go find your mommy, Junior." Although, if she's had an entire life of being annoyingly flirted with by guys she's not interested in for her looks, then maybe she just feels justified brushing them off at this point. Besides, maybe they're younger than her. Either way, after Locke says that it'll be nice to finally rid the island of Eggman's filth, Rouge finds him attractive, and Locke says in a deadpan way, "Somehow you don't strike me as the meek, helpless type." She then explains that after a chance encounter with Bang, who she doesn't mention by name but only by species, she says that things haven't been the same since, so she's manipulating him into thinking she's scared and needs a bodyguard, but she's not acting scared. Scourge then wonders what kind of fun he could have at Sonic's parents' house. For some reason, when he finds a landmine, he thinks, "That looks like one of my Doc's gizmos." But the good Robotnik of his world never made anything resembling a landmine. At least it clarifies it's nastier, so it makes more sense. And sure is fortunate for Scourge that he didn't get killed by walking into a landmine when he didn't know he had to be running. Sally comes out of a hut asking if he's alright, and says that she should have known better than to send him on this assignment. This would be a very dickish thing for her to say if you were Scourge and didn't know the context behind it. She's had a huge phobia of Sonic dying for a good while now, so that's why she said that, even though he's the perfect man for the job. Logically, she should have more faith in his abilities, but she's never had much faith in Sonic in dangerous situations, even from the beginning. I would completely understand if Scourge got angry at her for sounding totally dismissive of his worth like that. Fortunately for Sally, Scourge is holding his head looking too winded at narrowly surviving an explosion to get mad at her, so he was too focused on that to really notice her insulting remark. Murder says that if he hadn't set off the beta bomb, the effects would have been a lot worse. It gets gradually more dangerous over time instead of being the most dangerous it could possibly be right away. While Sally scolds that Sonic was supposed to mark the locations and bitches, "Can't you ever play it safe just once?" Scourge, still holding his head and leaning a little to the side like he's got a headache or something, thinks, "How do you like them apples? This Sally is just as big a pain as the one I left behind." I agree with him 1,000-fold for thinking that. I mean, I like Sally, I really do, but she can be annoying in these instances, because she's so genre blind to not have more faith that Sonic would be fine. Meanwhile, Locke asks Rouge in a friendly way what brings her to Angel Island and says the echidnas are a little suspicious of visitors. Rouge lies that she wants a chance to start over, starts making up a whole story to him that gets skipped over, and Locke says that she must be someone who lives life on the edge. Well, he's learned to be prepared. So even in her made-up story about her life, she still displays some of her actual character. After Rouge somehow figures out that Locke is the Guardian just because he says he's prepared, and Locke naturally gets suspicious because of her reaction, she then panics at herself disappearing from the feet down like Solaris Sue did in that damn cliffhanger, and Archimedes explains that he had teleported her away, explaining that Locke and women have always been a bad combination. I like his snarky line there. Really, Locke? Your son Knuckles has more sense than you. After Rouge gets teleported to Knothole, she decides that she needs a distraction for Locke to be a pigeon for her, and Scourge then decides that she's the best woman of them all. By the way, why didn't we get to see Scourge interacting with Sonic's parents this issue? Even though they're building up to that? He was just saying that he was going to see what fun he could have there, and Bunny told him at night to go home, but now it's daytime. So did we skip over him getting scolded, or did he legitimately spend all night outside sleeping in the cold, rather than get yelled at by people who look like his parents? Actually, that might make a bit of sense. He's probably been yelled at by his parents. It's too much for him to bother with anymore. But then why didn't he just go sleep over at some other house instead of sleeping outside? In the next story, we start out with an entire page wasted on worthless recap of literally just one issue ago, because viewers are goldfish apparently. Then the story starts out for real after another page is wasted. So we can see right away that rather realistically, there's far more than just one evil counterpart of a person out there, because Tails is immediately bothered by Tails with spikes on his head and a blunt weapon, who insists that once he removes Tails, he'll be the Prime One. Never mind the fact that he doesn't come from the Prime universe and so would never be the Prime One. He's delusional. Fortunately, the selfish jerk is immediately kicked for that, and the other Tails start arguing over who will fight Moggle because they can't all do it at once for some reason, like Sonic did fighting Robotnik with all the other Sonics. I love how Sonic's reaction to all these other Tails perfectly demonstrates how deeply he loves his little brother, thinking, so many little buddies, so very weird, but where's my little buddy? It's so sweet that he thinks of every Tails that way on instinct, even though they're not his. Also, I like that one of the Tails says he has a 300 IQ, so plenty of Tails are geniuses out there. While the other Tails discuss in a committee, Tails decides to just deal with Moggle himself. So I guess what's supposed to make him the best Tails is his independent streak being the strongest? But you'd think one of the evil Tails, like Miles, would think to do the same thing, isolating himself from everyone and stuff. So Tails takes off to fight Moggle without telling Sonic first. I'm surprised you can even still see the Zone Cops after they were dealt with, instead of Moggle completely vaporizing them. I'm even more surprised he didn't kill them, or at least Tails isn't aware if he did, considering he wants to step in before that would happen. Moggle tries to throw a laser at Tails, and fortunately Sonic immediately happened to be there to save him with super speed, because I guess he zoomed around the other room with super speed, couldn't find Tails there, and came here. After Tails says he came to the crazy conclusion that Moggle's blast could have turned him into Turbo Tails, Sonic at least lampshades the craziness, saying he could have gotten himself killed. And he says that they've got to deal with Moggle the smart way, not the hard way. He's more strategic than people give him credit for. After Sonic and Tails taunt Moggle, they then get all the other Tails to go rush at him. A pretty smart plan I'm glad they used. Do they really have to have the caveman Tails say that stupid brainless line? So they all rush him at once to overwhelm him. Oh, I think I see Anti-Tails there, and he's flying up to them to fight them just as bravely as the rest of them. We then have a callback to when all the Sonics fought Robotnik's giant mecha, as they say something pretty similar to what they said in the same situation. While he's off balance, let's hit him with everything we've got. Then it's proven that this was indeed intentional, as Moggle asks if they think he's as weak as the giant Borg, which he psychically knows about, I guess. He says this while smacking several Tails away with his hand, including the Anti-Tails. He then explains that he had witnessed Robotnik's defeat from that date, and then he called himself evil. Again, that's psychologically impossible. And he doesn't strike me as the type of person to happily have fun calling himself evil because he wants to be cool. I wouldn't think he'd care whether he's good or evil, or cool or not. Either way, Moggle uses his omnipotence to try to throw lasers that can miss instead of using it to paralyze everyone and suffocate them immediately. And after Sonic tries to push some Tails out of the way of a laser strike, he gets attacked by it himself, with that laser blast seeming to create Chaos Emerald shards. This terrifies Tails at the sight of it, making him jump to the conclusion that Sonic was killed from it when he's been hit with lasers before, although Moggle is pretty powerful. He's enraged, and Aether conveniently shows up at the No Zone to tell him that he can merge with the other Tails for a super form since that's his destiny. Except he wouldn't have thought to do that if Aether hadn't told him he could because it was supposedly his destiny. It's like the time travel problem. So yeah, Tails has a horrible looking, creepily muscular looking super form. Let's not dwell on the superficial here, there's more to a story than just art. Appeal problem aside, the point is that Tails absorbs Moggle's power because he can do that apparently, and after Sonic's told by Sonic that Tails is now the ultimate power in the multiverse, Tails teleports to him back to normal as I wonder what the hell it was like from the other Tails' perspectives being merged with him like that. Hopefully they were all unconscious during that endeavor. Sonic asks Tails how he found him after he says tag you're it, and Tails shows off his genuine intelligence by saying that hiding in the trees would have worked if the sun didn't cast a shadow to the ground. Merlin, proud of Tails, says to Aether that with the power to shake the cosmos, he instead used it to restore everything to its proper balance as if it never happened, and with no evidence existing of his heroic deeds in the multiverse. Does no evidence include nobody remembering what happened? So he restored all of the destroyed zones to normal. Aether then points out that the only evidence left is the fact that Moggle is back to being sealed Master Emerald. Wait, no, instead the narration explains that he's been imprisoned in the very same emerald that had been in his chest for centuries, not the Master Emerald. So now that emerald is being guarded by Aether, who's a ghost by the way, so hopefully this spells the end for him because it's gotta be hard to recover from that. Wait, never mind, I just remembered that he does show up again later despite being with Thera and powerless. Because fuck logic. The narration explains that with him finally separated from the Emerald, his chaos powers are gone. The first story was by Ken Penders, naturally since the story introducing Scourge was the first one Penders ever worked on. This was the perfect example of a Penders story. I love the concept, but the execution could have been better. There were a lot of missed opportunities with the main story of this issue. I loved the concept of the Scourge replacing Sonic, I really do. I especially love how it was implemented, what little bit we actually get to see. Instead of him acting like a stereotypical evil twin by doing evil things for no reason, his evil is entirely unintentional. He's a selfish hedonist first and foremost. All he does is flirt with Amy and then move on to Bunny hours later because I guess Amy was too busy to spend all her time with him, and so he moved on to the next girl who could give him the affection he wanted. He desperately craves affection as if he's been lacking it for a good chunk of his life, and is overcompensating for it now, giving him a potential fruiting excuse. And his loneliness is to the point where he's being a Casanova, not thinking about the potential consequences once the girls get to talking and go after him for it. Naturally, since Sonic doesn't think ahead either. I guess him only doing that makes sense, not just because he's not as evil as you'd expect, but also because he doesn't want to risk getting caught as an imposter. Like Patch, he'd rather keep it subtle. But subtle's not really Sonic, or Scourge. How long would he have been able to keep this up? Especially with Sally being just as much of a nag here as she apparently is on his planet. The missed opportunities for this whole concept are ridiculously high because it's used for such a short amount of time, and we never get to see him interacting with either Sonic's parents, who you'd think he would have run into instead of sleeping outside, or with Fiona. So yeah, there's a lot to say about this concept. Romy Chacon wrote the other story. Yeah, I know, Titan Tales looks terrible, the entirety of the Sonic fan base has already made it a joke, and it's been used to rag on the entire comic by people who don't even read it. As for the actual story, they did the best they could. I love the reference to when the giant fork was by. It really felt rewarding as a long-time reader seeing the writer make that. And the reference makes perfect sense in universe too. I like seeing Anti-Tails fighting just as bravely as every other Tails. I love seeing that he wasn't the only evil Tails out there. In fact, I'd say the one who tried to actively kill Tails to become the new Prime Tails was way eviler than Miles, because Miles never expressed any desire to do that. And plus it makes even more sense for there to be tons of evil Tails, considering that a mutant like him is bound to have gotten bullied and turned on humanity, or at least become cynical from it. I also loved Sonic's reaction to the other arguing Tails, thinking of all of them as little buddies. It shows how much he loves him. However, Tails' ability to merge with the other Tails and absorb Muggle's power in a super form came out of complete nowhere. It'd be much more acceptable if he did it with all the Super Emeralds of the No Zone, or at least the Chaos Emeralds. Lots of great concepts and Muggle gets what he deserves, but there were a few plot holes and a huge appeal problem with that design.